Hey, Howard.
In case you need a lawyer, here's my business card. I'm attorney Howard Ankin.
Oh, hey, Howard.
If you or someone you know has been hurt at work, Ankin Law can get the medical bills paid, the lost wages reimbursed,
Oh, hey, Howard.
and the compensation you deserve.
Hey, Howard.
We're one of the largest filers throughout the state of Illinois of workers' compensation claims. We're here to help. Call 312-6-million. Injury law made personal, that's Ankin Law.
From your favorite source for Chicago White Sox talk, delivering news, interviews, analysis, and more. This is the Sox Machine Podcast with your hosts, Jim Margalus, James Fegan, and Josh Nelson.
Thanks, Robin. Welcome to a new episode of the Sox Machine Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Nelson, and it's Thursday night, January 15th, 2026, as we bring you a new show. Today was the International Signing Day, as teams across Major League Baseball announced their deals. The Chicago White Sox signed 18 new prospects, and this is the first class under new Director of International Scouting, David Keller. Who are some of the interesting prospects, and what do we learn from Keller's first class? We'll discuss those topics, as well as talking about the upcoming changes at Kauffman Stadium. The Royals are moving the outfield fences in. Will that help or hurt the White Sox? Join us later will be Max Rieper of RoyalsReview.com as he shares his insight on the Royals Stadium project and what the future outlook appears to be for the Royals at Kauffman Stadium. And damn those Los Angeles Dodgers. They do it again as they sign Kyle Tucker. Is this a move that makes a case for a salary cap in Major League Baseball? First, we hear from White Sox Director of International Scouting, David Keller.
Signing day 2026. This is an exciting day for the White Sox. It's a celebration of the young men that we're introducing to our organization. It marks the beginning of their official start to their professional journey. And I'm just really proud of the efforts that our team has put forth. I can't overstate how humble I am to be a small part of the process, and excited to hand them off to Paul Janisch and our talented player development staff. I just want to note today, a day like today doesn't just happen. It requires a great deal of work and sacrifice from a lot of people. First and foremost, the support that we continue to receive from Chris and from ownership has been second to none. We've been able to communicate and collaborate effectively with departmental leaders in R&D, player development, sports performance. This operation and this day is truly a team effort. And our international leadership group, Luis Silverio, Adrian Puig, Rudy Moretta, Mac Grabowski, Max Hanley, Devin Wright, they do a tremendous job day in and day out to make all of this possible. And just want to say thank you to everybody on our staff who they relentlessly pursue talent each and every day, and they're the reason we're here.
According to Baseball America, the top two prospects the White Sox signed in this international class were Venezuelan catcher Fernando Graterol, ranked 27th, and outfielder Sebastian Romero, ranked 31st in Baseball America's top 50.
Fernando Graterol is interesting. He's a 17-year-old. He's got a good body. He's a catcher by trade, but he's more athletic than most catchers. You know, we're talking about a guy who runs a 6'8", 60. He's got plus bat speed. Raw power is, I would say, especially for the position, is at the top of the class. And we feel like he's one of the best catchers in the 2026 international crop. As for Romero, we're excited about him as well. He's a very fluid athlete, another guy who has a good body, has a chance to defend the position, a premium position in center field, and consistently puts together good at-bats, makes contact, and we're very excited to have him.
The White Sox signed 9 pitchers in this class, all right-handed, and Keller is already seeing promising results.
They're tall, they're long, they have the physical attributes that we look for. The majority of them are athletic and move well with their deliveries. And then they have stuff. I think for for the first time that I can remember, we're signing a group where the majority of them have already touched 90 miles an hour, and there's still room to grow with each and every one of them. And so I think the pitching group, I said it last year, I think it's true this year. The pitching group has a chance to be a real strength of this class for us. We put together a very thorough process that incorporated a lot of things, and I think allowed us to make really good decisions. And I'm excited to see the group as a whole move forward. And it's not just Roderick Ramirez or Franchel Cristostomo or Yordani Marte. They all bring something unique to the table, and they have traits that we think can be developed into valuable members of our organization.
Our Sox Machine beat reporter James Fegan got a chance to ask Keller a few questions during the media session that helps bring more insight in how the White Sox are attacking the international signing period differently than in the past.
I guess to start off, last year was obviously unique in coming in at the end of the season a little bit. And we know that these agreements are kind of years-long process. Just how different was this year in terms of how much you were able to kind of get your fingerprints on things, or it felt like a new operation putting this class together than maybe last year?
Yeah, I think, James, that's a good question. We spent a lot of time assembling this new staff, and that poured over into this year. But we really tried to identify talented individuals and then educate them on the organization's values and systems and put them in the best possible position to be successful at what they're good at, which is identifying talented players, assigning value to those players, and making sure that we have the opportunity to see them and make good decisions on them.
Obviously, it's not up and running yet, but was the new academy is going to be a place where a lot of these guys play at least at some point. Is that more of a factor or something that weaves into the pitch more this year?
Yes, it does. Obviously, we have what we feel like will be a state-of-the-art facility coming in 2027. And certainly when we talk to players, their families, their representatives, we are talking about the new facility and the training advantages that we hope that it provides.
Obviously, what's going on in Venezuela, was that a wrench in this final week of putting this class together at all, or did that not become as big of an issue as maybe anticipated? How did it kind of play out from your perspective?
Yeah, I think that's a fair question. Obviously there are major hotbeds in the international market, and Venezuelan happens to be one of them. There are a lot of good players come from everywhere, but there are a lot of good players that come from Venezuela. And so long before this day, we put wheels in motion, or plan in motion, to have the Venezuelan players and their families join us in the Dominican Republic. I mentioned earlier, we're a team-focused group, and there's no better way to demonstrate that than bringing everybody together. And what I can tell you is that everything went according to plan, and we feel fortunate that happened.
I think in the past you've brought up having scouts with a portable TrackMan and more kind of avenues to bringing in data. As you went through this process with this year, are there guys who maybe popped to you a little bit, or maybe more than you were thinking initially, from what you were able to bring in as far as data to the process?
Yeah, so obviously we're trying to use all the information at our disposal. There's this interesting cross-section of people and technology that comes together when it's time to make decisions. And so we can use it as a crutch and use it as a confirmation bias, or we can use it to help identify players, or we can use it as both, as a way to support certain decisions. And I think over time, at least over this last year, we've been able to really utilize the data and the information, not only to identify certain traits specifically with pitchers, but also use it to confirm what our eyes are telling us, whether it's blast motion or exit velocity on TrackMan. It really enables us to support, Stewart's Valdez, who signed with us today, man, he really has power. Well, that's backed up with exit velocities that are topping 109 miles an hour for a 16-year-old. Those sorts of things help us make decisions and also feel comfortable with those decisions.
What stuck out to me is when you see teenagers who are kind of filled out to over 200 pounds, especially someone on the mound like Roderick Ramirez. Just reading reports about how there's still like physical projection left, or you're kind of anticipating the velocity to grow. Just how far along, or how much more kind of development and projection is left for him.
I think there's a significant amount of development remaining for all of our pitchers. As it pertains to Roderick, Roderick's got a 6'3" frame. He might still grow a little bit. The 200 pounds is carried very well on his frame. It's lean muscle mass. He's an athlete. He moves really well on the mound. Our group has seen him up to 94 already. He's got a solid slider. He's developing the changeup. He's got all of the starter attributes and characteristics that we look for. And so it's a nice blend of someone who is ready to go in and be competitive now in the Dominican Summer League, but also has the ability to continue to grow in his body, develop experience on the mound. That's something that pitching in competitive situations is something that a lot of these young men are going to experience for the first time, where they have to navigate a lineup a couple of different times. And really looking forward to watching him embrace that challenge. And I think the sky's the limit for Roderick. Very excited that he's a part of our class and to watch him play this year.
Join us now on the Sox Machine podcast to provide a little bit more insight exactly what the Kansas City Royals are doing to Kauffman Stadium. Join us is a good friend of the show from RoyalsReview.com. It's Max Rieper. And Max, welcome back to the Sox Machine podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me back, Josh. Appreciate it.
So, the Royals are moving the fences in. Why?
Well, so Kauffman Stadium has traditionally been thought of as a pitcher's park, which it is in the respect in that it's really hard to hit home runs there. It has very deep alleys, some of the deepest left center and right center alleys in baseball. So, it's been very difficult to hit home run there. However, if you look at all the other numbers, singles, doubles, batting average, strikeout rate, it's actually been a hitter's park in a lot of respect, in those respects. But they wanted it to play a little more true. They want it to be a little more neutral. So they're bringing in the alleys 10 feet. So left center, right center are both coming in. Center field is still going to be the same at 410, but they want to bring those alleys in and reduce the amount of square footage in the outfield, as it were, to make it a little bit easier to get home runs out. JJ Picollo, who runs the Royals, he said the first thing he thought of was Eric Hosmer hitting that triple in the wild card game in 2014 against the A's, where he hit it to deep left center field. It looked like a for sure home run, and it hit off the very top of the wall. It was a triple, and it was great. It was a great moment, but he's like, that should have been that's a home run in 29 out of 30 parks. This is like the only one where it's not. So he doesn't want to make it so difficult to hit home runs at Kauffman. He wants it to play like a more neutral park. And I think you can understand that, for a long time, the Royals frankly didn't have the hitters that even if we move the fences in, it would make a difference. But they feel like now they're at a point where they have Bobby Witt Jr., they have Vinny Pasquantino, Salvador Perez. There was an article at Fangraphs that showed that he had the biggest gap in baseball between home runs, 30, and expected home runs, 34. So he was robbed quite a bit. Even at his advanced age, he's still hitting home runs, and he'd hit more if the ballpark wasn't such a cavernous park to hit in. So, they have some hitters now that can actually hit it pretty hard. Jack Caglione, the rookie who came up last year, struggled quite a bit, but they feel like he's a guy that can hit 30 home runs, 35 home runs if the ballpark was pretty neutral. And they feel like with the pitching they have now, they're not going to get hurt as much by having fences moved in a little bit. So, they've crunched the numbers. They had their analytics team look at the net benefit here, and they feel like this is a positive move to make the team better. We'll see.
Which Royals hitters, in your opinion, could benefit the most? You mentioned Salvador Perez. Is he going to get the biggest boost, or could you see somebody else getting a boost now hitting at home?
Yeah, well, like I said, Salvador Perez had the biggest gap in home runs and expected home runs. However, moving forward, he is, Father Time is undefeated. I don't know that he necessarily would be the guy that you would count on to take advantage of this necessarily. I've seen some people crunch the numbers and say that Bobby Witt Jr. would have had another 6 or 7 home runs had they had this configuration last year, which, you think about his numbers, he's already a 30 home run hitter. Now he's getting into 35, 37, home runs. That makes him a pretty elite hitter. He already is an elite hitter, but that makes him pretty damaging hitter at shortstop. So I think he could take advantage of it. I think Vinny Pasquantino, he had a really thoughtful tweet. It was lengthy, but very thoughtful about, he wants, a ballpark that is more fair for him, but he also is concerned about, am I going to lose singles? Am I going to lose doubles hitting this ballpark? So, he knows there's a little bit of a trade-off, but I think he'll take advantage of this quite a bit. I mean, there's at least just, from memory, there's a couple times where Vinny Pasquantino hit balls that seemed like they should have been gone and they were caught at the warning track. So I think he could benefit. And then we'll see about Jack Caglione. I think Jack Caglione has light tower power that could get it out of any ballpark. Really, his problem last year was that he hit the ball into the ground too much, and so that's his issue. But we'll see what kind of an effect that has on him as well. Other than that, it's right now it's a very top heavy lineup, so I don't know if this will necessarily help all 9 guys on the lineup. I don't know if Lane Thomas is taking advantage of this, but we'll see what kind of effect it has once it plays out.
Yeah, because reading your guys' work on RoyalsReview.com about this change, I had no idea, but I guess we've always assumed and always heard, especially Hawk Harrelson when he was calling games for the White Sox, that the outfield in Kauffman Stadium is massive, and it was the second largest in Major League Baseball prior to the fences moved in, only behind Coors Field, and we all know why Coors Field needs a massive outfield because of being such a high altitude. It's really easy to hit home runs at Coors Field. Is the unforeseen consequence now for the Royals making it easier for opponents now to hit at Kauffman Stadium? I'm asking for several friends that wear White Sox uniforms, Max, who have had a very difficult time in recent years hitting at Kauffman Stadium.
Yeah, so that is the concern because they have done this before. In 1995, they brought in the fences by 10 feet. Not quite the same configuration they're doing now, but they brought in the fences, and from 95 to 2003, Kauffman Stadium had fences that were moved in. And I don't know if you remember those years, but they were bad years for the Royals. They gave up 1 million home runs. The pitching staff was terrible. And so, that it didn't work out in that respect. So we'll see with this pitching staff. I feel like they have a better pitching staff that can handle that. But I am a little concerned because the strikeout rate for the Royals pitching staff is not great. They do have a good pitching staff that can get a lot of ground balls, but I don't know that they can miss bats necessarily. So we'll see. Like I said, they crunched the numbers. They feel confident about it. And Cole Reagans, I think, they didn't have him half the season, so that could have affected the strikeout rate. Their bullpen, I think, is more of a strikeout-oriented bullpen than it's been in the past. So, and they're definitely not teaching pitch to contact like they did 10 years ago. So I think there's a chance that it could benefit them overall without hurting the pitching staff too much. But like I said, I'm a little, kind of show me state, show me that this isn't going to hurt the pitching staff, because that's been my concern with moving in the fences this whole time is how is this, does this make us, does this hurt like what was a strength for this team, having a good pitching staff?
All right, so that's the Kauffman Stadium moving the fences in. The last thing I want to ask you about is the future of Kauffman Stadium, because the Royals are losing their neighbors, the Kansas City Chiefs, at Arrowhead, as the Chiefs are now moving to the state of Kansas. There are a lot of White Sox fans that are listening to this podcast, Max, that are also Chicago Bears fans. And the Chicago Bears now are flirting with the idea of leaving Illinois and building a new stadium in Northwest Indiana. What is going on in Kansas City right now in that massive parking lot with the stadium, the two stadiums sharing it, Kauffman Stadium and Arrowhead? Will the Royals now get an opportunity to actually stay where they are nearby and build a new stadium, or are the Royals going to flirt with the idea of also leaving Missouri?
So the Royals have a lease at Kauffman Stadium until 2030, and they have said we are not staying past that date. So I think there are a lot of fans that would like them to stay at Kauffman Stadium, and the Royals have been pretty adamant to say that's not going to happen. To redo the stadium at this point would cost almost as much as a new stadium. We don't like the location. It doesn't help generate, revenue from a near, a ballpark district like Atlanta has, which is kind of the model of what every team wants to do at this point. So they are looking for a new ballpark. Their number one choice was to move downtown. John Sherman, who owns the Royals, is a downtown Kansas City supporter. He's a longtime resident and a Civic booster, and he wants something that will generate revenue for the club, no doubt. But also he sees the ballpark as a way to spur development in downtown Kansas City. They had a vote in 2024 in April that was soundly rejected. It would have paid for a new ballpark for the Royals downtown and kept Arrowhead Stadium by renovating it. I suspect the Chiefs were not really that enthusiastic about the idea, but they went along with it, and it was defeated pretty soundly. So the Royals kind of had to scramble and go back to the drawing board. They have flirted with Clay County, which is a county just north of Kansas City. They've got a lot of vacant space, and it's more of an industrial area that you could turn into a ballpark district just across the river from downtown. However, they don't have a very large tax base. And then, of course, Kansas already has the Chiefs. They could lure the Royals as well. However, the funding mechanism that the Chiefs used to go to Kansas has expired, I believe, for the Royals. And Kansas lawmakers have said, time's up. We've kind of moved on. Now, they could always reopen it back up. It doesn't sound like there's a lot of enthusiasm for that. I feel like they've got the Chiefs now, and that's going to require a lot of tax revenue, frankly. And I don't know if Kansas has the appetite to bring the Royals as well. So I guess city leaders are still working with the Royals about a potential ballpark downtown. A Clay County may be off the table as well. One of the city officials there said, we're done with them. He doesn't really speak for the entire county, but that those talks may have kind of tapered off a bit. So we're kind of in a wait and see mode. This has dragged out much longer. The Royals said they were going to have a decision by like mid 2025. It's 2026. We still don't have an idea where that ballpark's going to be. So we'll see. I suspect the site they're looking at now is kind of just south of downtown. It's called the Washington Square Park. It's kind of a small area, so you'd have to really squeeze a ballpark in there. It would be kind of on the smaller side. But there is a lot of parking there. There's some transit. So we'll see. I would say stay tuned. I would expect something by this summer, but like I said, it's dragged out much longer than I ever expected this.
So the Royals and the White Sox have similar dates with their leases expiring. So that could be a lot of stadium news in the American League Central in the upcoming years. Again, you can follow Royals Review on Twitter and also Blue Sky and read their excellent work as they cover the Kansas City Royals, just like we do with the Chicago White Sox daily at royalsreview.com. Max, as always, a pleasure to speak with you. We'll chat with you again before the season starts. We have a better understanding of what the White Sox should expect from the Kansas City Royals. But thank you for the updates and what's going on with Kauffman Stadium.
Yeah, thanks again, Josh. Anytime.
Continuing the conversation, joining me now are Sox Machine's beat reporter James Fegan and managing editor Jim Margalus. And hello, gentlemen. Let's start with the White Sox international signings as today, and as we heard earlier in the podcast, of the 18 new prospects the White Sox are adding to their farm system. James Fegan, what have we learned from David Keller's first international signing period?
Well, it's certainly like a different looking crop than what we've had in previous years. It's everything happening, like being announced the day of. It's, half from the Dominican Republic. It's pretty Venezuelan heavy. There's 0 Cubans on it. It's all teenagers. It's half arms. I don't think you were seeing a lot of Dominican pitching really coming over from previous White Sox international class. It's, obviously they don't have like a multi-million, like they don't have anyone over 2 million or don't have maybe like anyone really in the top 20 class, but it's kind of more varied in a way that I think most teams are doing in terms of like investments at different levels, where as opposed to getting away from kind of what the Yankees are doing in recent years of like, and certainly what the White Sox have done seemingly out of lack of options of like, let's just blow most, if not all of our prospects on 1 or 2 or 3 guys. So it's kind of reflective of that a little bit. Keller described the arms they have as tall. They're all tall and long and athletic. And then, yeah, it is a lot of guys over 6 feet. He said like almost everyone had touched 90 out of their group. So definitely hunting like outlier physicality, like with their arms, with guys that they think can tick into the upper 90s. And the way he talked about, I gotta look up his name now. the guy who's 6'4", to Stewart's Valdez, 6'4", 200-pound, 17-year-old, raved about all the things that he did, tools wise. Cited like Arias 109 max exit velo, which is more than some people who will get hundreds of at bats for the White Sox this year, on top of some pretty impressive 60-yard dash times. So they're hunting tools, they're hunting ceiling, at least from what we can see. Obviously, it's a pretty opaque process, but and a little bit of what he mentioned is that they're definitely enthused by some guys that got some things definitely came together late. Stewart's being part of it, but this is a group that maybe next year's class will really represent something that's entirely what they've done, which was one, like players that they originally probably came to agreement to with this new group. Some of these guys definitely predate them. And maybe it's not even until 2028 that we're talking about a class that like maybe represents what they feel they can do when everything's in order. Or is even like, I've already heard them talk about deals that they have past 28. Obviously, there's been reporting about deals they have out as far as 2030. So it's still going to be a while. So we're really seeing what this is. Like one of the guys that, David Keller shouted out as a point of his press conference, well, like wasn't even in the media guide as far as last spring. He was someone who's hired in March. So it's still come together a lot. This is still, it's nice. Obviously great if one of these people pops or, Graterol has a Carlton Fisk like run, but this is still maybe like stuff on the surface of something that's still coming up. Like it's not really something we should use as like our big grade about what this operation is going to be necessarily, which is kind of the frustrating nature of it.
Right. It's going to be a couple years, Jim, before any of them reach Kannapolis, before we get a chance to start watching them on MILB.
Yeah, probably. Probably best case scenario would be somebody getting to Kannapolis at the end of 2027, after a splendid stateside debut in Arizona. But yeah, most of them spend the entire year in the Dominican, be it for, developmental purposes or tax purposes. And then they, usually make their stateside debut in Arizona. And then maybe at the end of the year, they matriculate upwards, depending on what the draft looks like. But yeah, it's going to be a pretty slow roll.
Any international prospects the White Sox signed, Jim, that caught your attention?
Well, James mentioned Stewart's Valdez. One, he sounds like a plural of Stuart Valdez. That a joke I'd already make. He's beaten me to that. But yeah, just a huge guy for a 17-year-old with some standout tools, and the way it was written up in Baseball America is like his swing doesn't look good right now, and so this is kind of a test of their ability to develop a little bit at the lower levels as they approach this new international or this new Dominican baseball facility they're looking to open. It's kind of interesting that the two catchers they drafted, one was Graterol, who is 1.6 million. He's a power over hit type profile right now, and he's got a strong arm, but blocking and receiving, still need a lot of work, which, is said of most guys. But it's funny that Ronald Cardoso, who is the Venezuelan catcher, signed for $375,000. Like he's kind of fills in the gaps of that profile in terms of like, oh, he's advanced for a catcher. Like he's really good at receiving and has an idea of what he's doing back there. So it's kind of funny that they have, if they're looking for a catcher of some kind out of this group to, at least get to the low minors and then see where you get from there. It seems like they've kind of spread their bets a little bit to be hopefully somebody who's able to hack it defensively, and then hope that they fill in the gaps otherwise. So yeah, those are the two that jumped out to me. The other thing that jumped out to me in terms of the press release is that every single prospect has his bonus identified, which is might not matter to most people, but it's helpful for us certainly as people writing about and talking about the DSL, of just having some idea of what expectations might be for a certain player. And before it would be like they'd name the, most of the 6-figure contracts or bonuses they would name, but anybody below or even some of the low 6-figure deals, they wouldn't identify. So it'd be just big numbers and then a whole bunch of other names with no dollars attached. So you didn't know if anybody was, supposed to be anybody. And you have like Javier Mogollon pop and look real impressive. And like, did he sign for 200,000? Did he sign for 40,000? That kind of makes a difference in terms of just the story and developmental arc, and just the likelihood of going further. So the fact that there are 18 prospects and 18 bonuses identified, I think is nice. I appreciate the transparency, just to know, set baseline expectations as we preview the DSL season next year, and then go from there.
Well, this is, again, the first international signing class under the new international director, David Keller. And as James pointed out, we'll learn more about what the White Sox do as they transform their international efforts. They've been busy. I mean, they got a long way to go, but we wanted the White Sox to be more involved in Japan. They signed Murakami. And now we wanted the White Sox to not only don't always sign the 20-plus-year-old Cubans, and they've done that. So far, the White Sox have shown improvement, at least in my perspective, on their international efforts. We'll see if it transforms into anything over the next couple of years. The other big news as far as concerning the White Sox, and again, we'll get to the big MLB news in a moment here, but games in Kansas City, Jim, might look a little bit different. We just heard from Max Rieper of RoyalsReview.com, and he did an excellent job of explaining why the Royals are moving in the fences. But from a White Sox perspective, the struggles at Kauffman Stadium, Jim, as you wrote, are well documented, especially the last few years of all the struggles the White Sox have had, especially playing games at Kauffman. Will the White Sox benefit having the fences moved in?
I guess it literally can't hurt them. They can't win there the way things were. So perhaps this helps. There's no immediate reason to think that it'll be a godsend for them, just because the Royals have out-homered them with the big fences. I looked at the spray charts of just the close calls, and then the Royals outnumbered the White Sox in terms of close calls going over the fence. Yeah, I guess the one area is, if the White Sox really had a big discrepancy between the two teams of just being defensively capable in the outfield. This does seem like a measure to allow the Royals to field worse defenders out there. Trade offense for defense versus like having an MJ Melendez or a Jack Caglione out there and really fumbling around and making their, when they try to seek offense from players like that and they don't hit it right away and they're not good defenders, it hurts them doubly. So I think, they talked about their, outlook of next 5 years. And I think that might be part of it, is like, if they want to get some bats out there that don't kill them in the field and kill all their value, that's one way to do it. And we've seen like the White Sox have, slow-footed outfielders out there, failing to trap the ball in the corner or take very generous angles to those rounded corners. And when balls rattle around down there, and whether they have to chase it or whether they are too conservative, it's a triple either way. So I am curious, like on the margins, I could see it making a difference to where like it is a bit more forgiving for the bad White Sox outfielders that play out there. And it is a little bit more, they talk about more fair in terms of like rewarding good contact. And if the White Sox are looking to get homers at right field, like some of that homer hunting at right field might now clear the wall at Kauffman in terms of getting into one and sending it out to right. So I could see it helping. The fact that, I was looking it up over the last 2 years, the Royals out-homered the White Sox 13-4, out-tripled them 2-0, out-doubled them 24-20. All this coming with the White Sox only hitting in the Royals only hitting in one of the ninth innings. There's only one game that went to a walk-off. Every other game, the Royals were done hitting after 8, and yet they've, came into plate more. Had a whole lot more damage at the plate. So whether in terms of rate stats or counting stats, the Royals had the White Sox crushed in both. So I welcome any change in terms of like making those games more watchable. And it does feel a little bit like messing with something that had been working for them, but I could see an argument for like if they do need offense, because the Royals had the worst outfield in baseball last year and they struggled the year before too. Like if they really need to get some kind of offense from the outfield, it does make some sense to where this is a way they can do it without undermining their identity in the other regard.
I like this idea better, the Royals moving the fences in, than whatever the hell Baltimore did to their left field, because Gleyber Torres was ripping them apart. And really sapped the value of some of their own hitters. Like, that didn't make any sense. Like, this makes more sense to me.
That felt very emotional. The Camden Yards one.
Just take a deep breath, Baltimore. It's okay. James, you covered a few games at Kauffman Stadium. I wanted to get your thoughts because, as we heard from Max, the Kansas City Chiefs are leaving Arrowhead, and they are heading to the state of Kansas, which, of course, draws a lot of attention and interest from the Chicago Bears, as they are currently flirting with the idea of moving to Northwest Indiana. But you've been to Kauffman. Jim, you and I have been to Kauffman. We had a road trip there. It is a sea of a parking lot. Like, if you wanted to build an entertainment district, you got plenty of land to do so, especially if the Chiefs are leaving town. But it sounds like the Royals ownership have no interest in playing at Kauffman Stadium beyond 2030. What do you make of that if the Royals leave Kauffman?
In one aspect, it's a bummer. I think it's a really pretty park. I think it looks how baseball stadium should look. I think it looks pretty unique. I think even messing with the dynamics of it's kind of a bummer, even if it's not something that was invented yesterday or anything. But I think the type of baseball that ballpark forces you to play can be very aesthetically pleasing, and certainly like the mid 2010s Royals are an example of that. So it's kind of sad to hear. Also, owners saying that they're going to be out of a place by 2030. Sounds like big talk. We'll see. Seen it go sideways on them before. It's in the middle of nowhere. There's nothing around it. There's not even a hotel around it. As I will note as a beat writer, there's not even like any place to get food. It's like, it's open area, but it's just like there's nothing drawing people to it other than the fact that that's where the Royals are. Like, it's not, Target Field's just like in the middle of downtown. Comerica's in the middle of downtown. Just like the other teams in the division, like Progressives in the middle of downtown, like are all kind of making themselves, especially like these a little bit shade smaller than Chicago, New York, LA type Midwestern cities that, build this as like part of their overall like kind of downtown experience in a way that I think is compelling. Like the Royals just don't have that at all. Like they're nowhere near the power and light district. So like it's the least convenient trip in the division for a lot of reasons. And as much as I don't think that should be like a reason to like throw Kauffman in the dustbin and not care about it, I think it's kind of inevitable that someone would look at it this way, like, let's get out of here.
Yeah, I get that. But is there a sentiment of if you build it, they will come? Like, can you build your own battery like Atlanta did? I mean, the Braves are not in Atlanta. They're out in the suburbs. That was just at least my feelings. Like, you have all this parking space. Now you can build whatever you want. But I guess the Royals don't have interest in doing that. We'll see what they do. But yeah, the Royals and White Sox tied together as far as their leases expiring after the 2030 season.
And it does make sense for them to draw a hard line right now, at least because of the Chiefs going on the other side of Kansas. Like, very fierce rivalry on State Line Road. Not just sports, like businesses going back and forth and getting all these tax breaks and taking advantage of just how hungry these states are for any kind of headquarters or massive civic investments, even if it doesn't really pay off for them tax-wise. So, given that the Chiefs have gone to Kansas, I think this is the time for the Royals to say, like, hey, somebody make us a great deal on some land or, some infrastructure, or even building the stadium on the Kansas or Missouri side of Kansas, because who knows, maybe the Kansas side will do the same thing. Will be an Overland Park instead of the Power and Light District, or where the printing operation was for the Kansas City Star. Like there are a couple compelling downtown locations that they floated, but haven't had either the money themselves, or haven't had the community support to make that land theirs. And perhaps some legislature will be more desperate than it was before.
Yeah, foreshadowing is not the right term, but it's very similar what the White Sox and Bears are dealing with in Illinois. And it's like we're watching the Chiefs and Royals dealing with the situation, and the Chiefs got the deal that they needed or that they wanted, and they're moving to Kansas. And it sounds like, for all intent and purposes, Indiana is willing to give the Chicago Bears whatever they want to move to Gary, And if the Bears do move to Northwest Indiana, for Justin Ishbia that does want to build a new White Sox stadium, does that open up avenues for the White Sox dealing with the state of Illinois, much like the Royals dealing with the state of Missouri? I don't know. But again, you have two teams in the American League Central right now that are looking for new stadiums, and both stadium leases expire after the 2030 season. And the football teams that are also in their city, one has already decided that they're going to move by 2030. We'll see what the Bears do. But interesting situation. I see a lot of similarities and parallels between what the White Sox and the Royals may be dealing with for their new stadiums. And then finally, about 5 minutes before we recorded this podcast, around Major League Baseball, Jeff Passan at ESPN was the first to tweet it. The Los Angeles Dodgers are signing outfielder Kyle Tucker. Jesse Rogers of ESPN tweeted that the deal is for 4 years, $240 million. There's an opt-out after year 2. Kyle, why bother? You're the first $60 million a year player in Major League Baseball. And Jim, I think for the other 29 teams, I even tweeted out ugh, it's the Dodgers again, continuing to win. And in life, sometimes it does feel like we get into these repeated cycles, and I'm brought back to being a kid again, Jim. In the late 90s, early 2000s, the Dodgers have become the New York Yankees. I've been through this before, and it wasn't a lot of fun being a fan of another team, watching George Steinbrenner and the Yankees dominate in the trade and free agent market. And it feels like where we are currently today in the landscape of Major League Baseball, the Dodgers have become the late 90s, early 2000s New York Yankees.
Except it seems more effortless, almost like they just kind of hang around, wait to see if anybody is going to make a deal that blows other teams out of the water, and they just kind of linger and hey Kyle, what do you think of a lot of money? And yes, it just seems so simple for them. And you look at the hoops the Blue Jays have had to jump through to try to sign guys and fail. And this is another case of just I'm hoping for another Blue Jays Dodgers World Series. One, because the last one was great, but also I just feel like there's going to just be a lot of rage built up over, these, the last two winters of the Ohtani and then Tucker of just, or the last two cycles, I should say, of this happening, to where, it's, you have the Blue Jays aren't like an argument for the salary cap or because they want to spend big too, and they just can't. They can't get close on the kind of deals that Dodgers can make, and the Dodgers can just make them without second thought. So it is a case of, I think it's less an argument for the salary cap and just more an illustration of haves and have-nots, because the Mets would want to do something like this too. The big spenders, all want to do this. It's just the Dodgers have the ability to make players accept their money. They're just that compelling and that great of a location to end up. And it's I guess it would be like the Miami Heat, I guess, of just the just if you can't beat them, join them type thing of just or Kevin Durant joining the Golden State Warriors. Seeing this in other sports with a salary cap, so it doesn't necessarily present or create more parity, but it is certainly glaring right now with $60 million a year and a team signing a player that they weren't rushing to. It just kind of happened for them.
Right. Yeah, Steve Cohen, the owner of the New York Mets, on Twitter made a joke about let me know when you see smoke, much like how the Catholic Church announces a new pope. So it sounds like Kyle Tucker is making a decision on January 15th, and the Mets were one of the finalists, but Steve Cohen, with all his money, still could not outbid the Los Angeles Dodgers for Kyle Tucker. It's going to be a busy spring training for you, James. I mean, you got Japanese media now, not only going to the Dodgers, but now huddling by you with Murakami and the White Sox, and now the Dodgers. Kyle Tucker already added to that team. It's going to be a crowd there at Camelback.
Public doesn't know who Kyle Tucker is.
Oh, come on. Baseball media people do.
People are they're
Right.
gonna. I can't get to work because the second coming of Paul O'Neill has sent everyone into a tizzy. I feel like I'll find a parking spot at Camelback Ranch, but I appreciate your prayers.
Well, I'm trying to be helpful, trying to be supportive.
This is what happens when it's an open competition. The bad guys can win a lot. I think everything to stop it would be kind of a losery behavior, and maybe let's just make it more thrilling when they finally get taken down. But I feel like we freak out when these dynasties rise up, and they don't last forever. Things happen. The Warriors didn't actually win a championship every single year in perpetuity. Like something will happen. Something will go wrong. They'll get brain drain. I don't know. We'll see.
Feel like your fantasy team have a great regular season, collapse in the postseason.
All right. Well, I told Tanner Banks when he was the Phillies were in town this season, but the first time I saw him was at Winston-Salem, and I was down there to interview. I had like 3 White Sox prospects. It was Zach Collins, Luis Basabe, and now Kyle Tucker's new teammate Alex Call was on my list of people to profile. But the Luis Basabe interview, there was no interpreter there, so the number 3 hitter had to be the interpreter for him, which is Luis Fierro, who is now the White Sox assistant scouting director, or assistant international scouting director. So obviously big day for him as well. Didn't expect the Kyle Tucker association, but I wasn't paying attention to Tanner because he's like 26. He was in high A and it wasn't a prospect. So I was looking down when he was facing Kyle Tucker for the first time through. And I thought a gunshot had gone off because Kyle Tucker hit the loudest and longest home run off of him that I feel like I'd ever been standing that close to. It was very startling. Tanner remembered like the count and the pitch that he threw and like what he did in subsequent at bats when I brought that up. Like he wasn't fazed by this memory at all. But yeah, I should have known what that would lead to at that moment, I guess.
Yeah, again, for the youth, for our Gen Z listeners that weren't around, what the Dodgers are doing, very similar to what the New York Yankees did from 98 through 2001, and that thanks to the Diamondbacks and the combination of Randy Johnson and Curt Schilling were able to hold off the Yankees from a 4-peat.
I guess Tanner Banks, of that foursome, I guess Alex Call, he's probably like the bullpen equivalent of Alex Call, or maybe more accomplished. Trying to figure out like who's had the best career of that foursome.
I mean, Call could definitely is positioned to overtake him. Well, he has a World Series ring, so I guess you got to give it to Call. But before he got traded to the Dodgers, I probably would have said Tanner.
Tanner's making $1 million for the first time this coming year, so that's great for him.
Nice, congratulations, Tanner Banks. He's 1/60th of the way to.
I thought you were breaking in
He'll
to the Zoomers too, because you didn't think they knew who Tanner Banks or Zach Collins were, because that was that long ago.
No. Well, maybe for some of the White Sox.
The real
Luis Basabe may have been lost to the sands of time.
Yeah, that kind of did. I forgot about Luis Basabe. But there you go. Kyle Tucker now in the same lineup as Ohtani and as Freddie Freeman. Stock up on lefties. Already in July, you're a National League contender. You're going to need lefties in that bullpen. I'm sure the Dodgers will be there. But that will do it for this episode of the Sox Machine Podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you just discovered the Sox Machine Podcast, you can subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Spotify and Apple Music. You can also listen to the show and watch our videos at youtube.com/Sox Machine. If you do, please hit the subscribe button. You'll be notified when we have YouTube Shorts, and we'll be doing more of those 60-second videos as far as the news and highlights from the press conferences of White Sox coaches and players. So definitely subscribe to our YouTube channel so you guys get that additional video content. You can follow us on social media. We're on all the platforms at Sox Machine. You can follow James at JR Fegan. You can follow me at SoxMachine_Josh. If you enjoy our work and want full access to all of our coverage of the Chicago White Sox and Major League Baseball, sign up to become a Sox Machine subscriber at SoxMachine.com/products. For example, we have additional benefits and additional tiers of support, and we met with our Veterans Committee earlier this week to share with them our 2026 plans and also get their feedback on how we can cover the Chicago White Sox better. So, again, if you want full access to all of our coverage, monthly plans start at $5. But if you want more from us at Sox Machine, definitely check out some of those other tiers, as we do have a couple spots open in our Veterans Committee. Inquire within at soxmachine.com/products. The Sox Machine Podcast is a production of soxmachine.com. You're on for all things Chicago White Sox baseball and part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. Alongside James Fegan and Jim Margalus, I'm Josh Nelson. Thanks for listening and watching.